Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Don't Praise the Machine. This is episode number 165. As always, I'm one of your hosts. I go by the name Alexander Holland, and I'm sat in a beautiful Berlin, Germany, and down underneath me, as he is every single week, it's Melbourne's favourite number one professor of podcasting. He's got to be the one called...
John Junior Boost Maloney.
John Junior Boost Maloney. I've been getting a few flights recently, and something was different at Berlin Brandenburg Airport on my most recent flight, particularly going through security. The security said to us, do not take electronic devices and liquids out of your bag. Leave them in. And this is the first time that this has happened since, I think, 2000, with liquids around 2006 is when the 100 milliliter limit to liquids came in. And as I'm sure you're aware, when you go through airport security since 9/11 or thereabouts, you've had to take electronic devices out. So they've said, take out your laptop, take out your phone, take out the things that stop you from feeling alone.
Did you pre-prepare that?
No, I just made that up.
Great.
Take out your Kindle. Take it out now.
Take out your phone. Take all the things that stop you feeling alone. I confiscate them. I've noticed in recent years, maybe Australia, because we're so obsessed with borders, we're ahead of the game. But I've noticed in Australia, a lot of the scanners no longer require you to take laptops out, which is always such a pleasure because I hate taking it out. And so that's been the case for the last couple of years. I think that they go, no, you can leave it in, mate. And then you go to some other jurisdiction and they say, take everything out. Some of them say, take your shoes off. And I'm like, oh, fucking hell. And then I always have to go through a little bit of extra rigmarole because my crutches set off the scanners.
Yeah, of course. Your crutches set off scanners. Your crutches set off dogs. What else do your crutches set off?
Probably
starey children.
Prejudices. Yeah, they set off. Toddlers. They send toddlers into deep staring mode, which I'm quite fond of.
They set off evangelical Christians
trying to mind their business. Yeah, that's true. They set them into prey mode. They set dogs to bark, and they set scanners to high alert. Anyway, you were saying you went through.
Do you know why? So, as I was saying, I went through, and they said, "Don't worry about leave your liquids in. Leave or certainly they said leave your electronic devices in." And my question to you, because I never knew this, and I looked this up because. I only looked it up because they said you can leave your laptops and electronic devices in the bag. You don't have to put them out in the tray.
Right.
And I'm going to say to you, John, do you know why? It's hilarious that we just do all this stuff and we don't know why. Maybe you do. Do you know why specifically that we haven't been allowed to have electronic devices in our bags when they go through the scanner for years?
Well, I always assumed it had to do with something about the resolution of the scanner, that it could tell you something about it could tell me if there was a bomb in my laptop, but maybe if it was in a bag with a bunch of shit, it was harder to tell or something.
So you're close. So what it is, I always assumed that perhaps somebody had attempted to make a laptop bomb or something, and that's why they said, "I'll take the laptop out so we can just have a look at it and make sure it doesn't have wires and sticks of dynamite attached to it and a little alarm clock with alarms pointing to the minute that it's going to go off." But the reason they make you take electronic devices out is because the batteries from electronic devices, and I think maybe other elements of electronic devices, they mask what's behind them from the scanners, the traditional old school scanners. So scanners that have been being used up until very recently. If you had an electronic device, the scanner couldn't penetrate the device. So you could hide something behind the laptop battery or something like that.
Yeah, okay.
But then in
Right.
recent years, they've introduced some new groovy scanners with better scanning technology that can look all around. And if you are not being asked to take electronic devices out of your bag now, it's because your airport has the scanners that can look all around the bag. They don't need to worry anymore about the battery. And these same scanners now have technology that's also able, I don't know how they do this. They have scanners now that are also able to read the contents of liquids
Of your mind.
that are
Okay.
yes, they have.
They scan you for extremist beliefs.
They scan you for extremist beliefs and then say no, turn around and go home.
Yeah, we found 77 virgins in your imagination. You can't get on.
They can now scan liquids. So the previous limit was 100 milliliters of liquid that they would say you could take. And the reason for that was because in August 2006, British authorities prevented a terrorist attack on airliners involving liquid explosives, which were carried in beverage containers. But now this new scanning technology also is much better at scanning liquids. And of course, I also assumed that, just quite naively assumed that probably the person who's manning the machine is making all of the decisions. Like they see something come through and it's got a certain color to it and they go, hey, I've been trained on the colors. I know what this is. Of course, it's actually now an algorithm that is reading a ton of different information at once and then making an assessment. So the person who's manning the machine is very much being aided by the machine saying, I've assessed a whole bunch of data points with this bag, and I'll tell you whether or not this person needs to be taken aside or not.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's all
Does it
algos.
have a copy of the Unabomber manifesto in it? That kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it was so much.
How interesting.
I mean, airport security is one of those things that I just have thought, man, if you're a company and you can disrupt this in a scanning company, I mean, just imagine what airports would be like if you just could walk through in the way that we've dreamt of walking out of a supermarket, like the Amazon walkout store. Imagine how, because the stressful thing about catching a flight is security. Like, that's the thing that people freak out about. That's the big unknown because people don't know how long. Maybe there's going to be one person in the line. Maybe there's going to be 1,000. So if airport security was basically just like thousands of little things, or if it was just a big room that had a billion cameras trained on you, and you just walked, and if you were identified as being dangerous, they'd pull you aside. Imagine if you just walk through a hall,
laser.
like a train station. It would be like that. You just turn up and it would say, go to this gate.
Yeah, it would be like the glory days of at least domestic airline flights where they, back in the 60s, people used to just treat it like getting on a bus. You go, you pay for your ticket, on you get, and then you say, we're going to Cuba, everyone. Or you say, everyone, I need a suitcase with $100,000 in it, and then off you go. That's why they stopped having that sort of laissez-faire system. But now, thanks to robots, we can have it back.
Yeah, or if you needed to take a bomb between countries, that would be fine. You'd just be like, look, I've got a suitcase full of bomb, and but it's not for the plane, obviously. I'm not a psycho.
It's just, I've got a private vendetta. It's got nothing to do with the airline.
I'm a bomb dealer. I'm going to a bomb convention with my merchandise. These are samples.
Yeah. I saw a thing recently by a disgraced but still occasionally funny Louis C.K., comedian Louis C.K., and he said that he was in an which I thought was an interesting insight. He said he was at an airport and he had this, I can't remember what it was. He had some sort of electronic device with him, which he'd bought as a sort of souvenir. And let's say, for the sake of me retelling the story, and they said, "Oh, that looks like a weapon or a bomb, and we can't let you keep it." and they confiscated it, and he said, all right, fine, and they said, okay, have a good evening, and just let him go. And he was like, but it's either a bomb or it's not, and if it's a bomb, you're just still letting me on the plane. Like, I'm nuts. I'm going to do something terrible on the plane. It's such a weird mentality to be like, yeah, you can't take this on the plane because it might be a weapon, but without the weapon, we assume that you'll just be a normal passenger and conduct yourself appropriately. But airport security always strikes me as like a strange mix of very cutting edge and then very old-fashioned, because there are still, and it varies obviously a bit by airport, but there are still systems in place where people are just relying on, is this the same person as is in the passport photo? Just eyeballing you essentially. And
not
it's
anymore.
like they're checking your ID. No, but I mean, there's still, there's still, like, I go through Australian airports often, my passport won't read properly on the little scanner. So then they just send you around to the customs guy and he goes, oh yeah, there you are. It's you. Off you go. It's like, how do you know it's me? I could have had surgery to look like this.
I mean, I'm assuming now that I'm assuming it's virtually impossible to get through airport security now. This is a good question. So because all the facial stuff is computers now, it's not, even if it is even if it is an actual person that's looking at your passport, I always just assume now that they have given that authority over to the machines, because the machines are much better at knowing whether a picture of you in a passport is the person whose face they can then scan immediately, because the face scanning software is able to look at all these minute differences in people's faces that I'm assuming they're things like the distance between your eyes and all of these other little intricacies within your face, whereas a person, back in the day before the facial scanners, you would always think, maybe you'd put on a bit of weight, or you got a different haircut, or you have a beard, or you didn't have a beard, and you walk through and you go, what kind of training do these people get? Because this really doesn't look very much like me anymore.
Could easily be like a relative of mine. And I mean, I suppose it depends. I've been through some kind of pretty dinky airports in the last couple of years in places like Laos, and they're still relying on pretty traditional methods, I guess. And Jacinta looks very different in her passport photo, and is always like, oh yeah, I was, because she was recovering from, she was trafficked. She was recovering from chemo, and I think, well, anyone could just say that, and they just like, oh yeah, cool. Doesn't look like you, but I'll take your word for it, because like, what else am I going to do? I can't be fucked like writing this up, and it's probably just you. And then they still do this thing where they put me on a little chair, because the scanner doesn't, it just bleeps whenever I go through it because of the crutches. And they say, can you walk without those? And I kind of can, but I don't. I sort of make a point of saying no, because I'm like, you should have worked this out. Yeah. And then they get me to sit down on a little plastic chair. They put the crutches through to make sure I haven't stuffed pipe bombs into the middle of them, and then and then off I go. But I just get the low tech full body pat down, and I love the way that it changes depending on how litigious the country is. Like in America, they're like, I'm going to touch you for 3 seconds in your upper thigh. Is that okay? Do I have your consent? And I'm just like, look, can I just give you a carte blanche? Just do whatever you got to do, mate, but they're very pernickety. Whereas in Australia, they're just like checking my colon for no particular reason. I'm like, fair enough.
When they ask you if you can walk, you should say, I can if you pray.
Yeah. I'll say, look, I haven't been able to up to this point, but I could give it a shot.
But I'm gonna give everybody here rosary beads, and I want you all to clasp them I want you to all start praying.
I mean, I can walk without them, but they want you to like do this sort of frog stance in the scanner. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do that without the crutches. And I don't fancy falling over in front of a queue of people. And just know that's what's going to happen if I have to do it in a performative way. So, but then I get to cut lines, which makes up for all that bullshit.
Man, I got to tell you, it was so good being able to just get through a bit quicker. Just those little things, like, oh man, I've been waiting.
Yeah,
everybody's been waiting so long to not have to do all this fucking bullshit. To not have to
pulling the laptop
everything
out. So annoying. Yeah.
And speaking of technology,
does that mean I can carry jumbo Rexona deodorant in my bag and not have to worry about?
Yeah, so the thing is going to scan now. I think the new scanners should be able to look into your can of Lynx Africa and say,
yeah,
that's just because it's not because he's dangerous. It's just because he's a very tacky, cheap man. You'll get the tacky, cheap alarm.
Who stinks?
Smells like
he's not
13-year-old boy.
He's a fucking loser. Yeah, that's right.
Now, John, speaking of technology, you wrote to me in the week and you said, man, technology's starting to enter some realms that we could have never thought. And we've got just the podcast for this.
Yeah, it's true. You've been drawing to my attention in recent weeks the strange resurgence in the popularity of Catholicism, which is not something I thought was on the cards in 2024.
Guilty. I forgot my little crucifix. I forgot my crucifix, but he's here. Yeah, you didn't have that on your 2024 bingo card.
Yeah, that's right. I did not. I definitely did not think that the Catholic Church's terminal decline was going to be arrested by a bunch of celebrities getting into Catholicism at the last minute. But that seems to be what's happening. A lot of internet bro culture is suddenly being suffused with readings from the catechisms and papal announcements, which is an interesting twist.
Latin Mass is back, baby.
Latin Mass, yeah. I thought we'd seen the last of that for sure, but I love that. Just as an aside, the church has said, look, these things are cyclical. If we get cool, if we go with the trends are just going to go out of fashion. Eventually, people will go, you know what? Let's go back to the Latin Mass. You lost your way in about the mid-60s. Need to get back to your roots.
Were they doing? You were saying they were doing the Latin Mass. I'll have to ask my parents if they remember attending, which version they remember attending.
My understanding is that maybe it varied a bit, but they were doing Latin Masses until maybe Vatican II, which was a meeting of the higher-ups that decided, let's do it in the language of where people are instead of a dead language that most people won't understand. And I think they might have had some bits in English, but a lot of the service used to be in just kind of chanting in Latin.
Wow.
And there were some people, your kind of Mel Gibsons who Mel Gibson is famously part of a Catholic sect which said no to those changes and kept Latin massing it up and said, you can definitely make Lethal Weapon movies. You can you can get wasted and verbally abuse police officers. You can yell at your ex-wife down the phone, but you cannot deliver the mass in English. Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, I get it. That's kind of, it has a coolness to it. Anyway, so the Catholic Church, maybe because they're picking up on this, although that would surprise me, but for whatever reason, they have in the recent weeks taken a step further towards canonizing the first millennial saint. And his name is Carlo Acutis, and he was born in 1991. I think he was born in London, but he is of Italian background. Sadly, he passed away at a young age, at 15. And he was known as a kind of early tech head, a computer whiz, at least to his technologically illiterate parents and community, and he started off designing websites for his school and his parish, and then he famously designed a website that sought to document all of the Eucharistic miracles that had occurred and were recorded. And a Eucharistic miracle, for those who haven't been to Mass in a little while, I know all of our listeners are Catholic, but some of you might be a bit lapsed. The Eucharist is the holy bread and the blood, the wine, and bread and wine, which has been consecrated, which is a little spell that the priest makes. And Catholics, some Catholics, the particularly zealous ones, believe, as everyone is supposed to believe, that when the spell happens, it changes the bread and wine into the body and blood of Christ, not in some kind of metaphorical way, but in an actual way, albeit a way that is not detectable by any scientific instruments or other methods known to man. In any event, Eucharistic miracles will include things like, the Eucharist starts bleeding, or it starts glowing, or somebody touches it and it heals their wounds or something. Or sometimes saints claimed to be able to survive for years just eating the Eucharist, and so on. So Carlo was a very pious young man. He was, from a very young age, he was kind of fixated on churches, and he prayed the rosary, and he asked apparently one of his parents wasn't really into it, but he had a Polish nanny who was Catholic, and she kind of told him all about how it worked. So he became very devout, and then he made this website. And other factoids that I've picked up about him, this great line from Wikipedia: he struggled with his weight, often overindulging in Nutella. That's more of a humanizing detail. I mean, we've all been there. Who hasn't overindulged in Nutella? And then it says, people around him considered him a computer geek due to his passion for and skill with computers and the internet. He was skilled in using Dreamweaver, Java, C++, and Ubuntu, which everyone will remember. He often helped others with technical issues, and I think those who are familiar with the Gospels will know that Jesus was very keen on assisting everyone around you with technical and computer cock-ups where you could. And so he died pretty soon after died in 2006. Pretty soon after that, people started saying, we need to get this boy on the path to canonization. That is, to becoming a saint, which is an interesting and obscure and complicated path. Like every process in the Catholic Church, it's kind of steeped in ritual and complexity. You've got to go through a variety of stages. First, you get deemed a servant of God, then you get deemed a venerable person, and then you get beatified, in which case you are made blessed, and then finally you get to become a saint. And the interesting thing about it is that for Carlo Acutis, he was beatified some years ago, maybe more than 10 years ago, and then the process becomes, in part, waiting for miracles. So in order to become a saint, you've got to be held responsible for 2 miracles, which means that someone has to pray to you or whatever, think of you or whatever, and they're in a spot of bother, and then you intercede as the dead saint and save them, which is a very peculiar thing, I think, in the Catholic Church, that it requires this.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things where you think the Catholic Church is sort of above this kind of hocus pocus nonsense.
Totally.
And then it's this weird thing where when you hear about, because as a kid, there's saints in the Catholic Church, and you go, okay, and then when somebody starts explaining to you how that happens, you go, that sounds like some crazy American mega church nonsense.
Totally. Like, there are Vatican officials that go around and sort of investigate and verify these miracles. And I don't know what their confirmation rate is. Like, do they go and investigate some and go, no, that was probably either not a miracle.
That was the wind.
Or we don't. Yeah, that was the wind. Or that was just radiation therapy that worked. Or that was definitely a miracle, but it was a miracle done by a different saint. You know, he was praying to a different Saint Carlo, not Carlo Acutis. And it was, or maybe Carlo Acutis did it, but with the assistance of another saint, and it's got to be a solo effort. I don't know how that works. Unassisted miracle performance. So what it's assuming is that he's sitting in a heavenly realm, and then someone says, help. And you know.
Specifically to him.
Yeah, help, Carlo, help. And he goes, all right, kind of Superman-esque, teleports down there and fixes them up. This is like the kind of Xenu level Catholicism that they don't like to talk about because it's just a bit too wackadoo. But it's what they believe. And anyway, so
Carlo,
these two miracles.
Help me.
Carlo, help. Acutis. So the church recently decided, the Pope actually sat down with these Vatican officials and they said, the second miracle has been confirmed. The first miracle has been confirmed. Carlo's done it. And what was interesting to me was that the miracles were very much consistent with Carlo's character and interests during his lifetime. So normally you might get something like, you know, I was swept off the side of a riverbank, and I was in some rapids, and I was going to go over a waterfall, and then I prayed to the Virgin Mary, and I found a tree and grabbed a hold of it, and I was saved, and that was a miracle. But obviously, we're talking about a man who, I think he was also had a YouTube presence. I might have left that out, but he was known as God's influencer because he was a popular YouTube celeb and a popular website designer at a time when that was kind of a bit less of a thing than it is now. And the miracles are kind of very much in that spirit. So the first one, which was back in 2020, I think around about November 2020, there was a young guy in the Philippines. His name was Arturo Diaz, and he was using Windows 7, and he was a devout Catholic, like a lot of people in the Philippines, and he was also about Carlo's age, so he was a great admirer, had been a great admirer of his. And yeah, his whole family, they were kind of a poor Filipino family. They used a computer, but they were using Windows 7. And many of you will know that on the 14th of January 2020, updates and security assistance, technical assistance that Windows automatically Microsoft, I suppose, automatically provides for versions of Windows ceased because Windows 7 was too old. And they said, okay, we've been providing Windows 7 updates and technical support, automatic updates every so often, but you're on your own now because it's an old piece of tech and you need to upgrade to the new Windows. We're not going to support it anymore. And Arturo and his family were worried because they knew that they couldn't afford a Windows upgrade, and they were worried that with the absence of updates and technical support, they'd be vulnerable to viruses and spyware. So they prayed to Acutis, Carlo Acutis, in their local church. And 14th of January came and went. They went to the church and prayed to Acutis on the 14th of January. And what happened was, inexplicably, their version of Windows 7 continued to receive updates, and nobody understood why. They called Microsoft. They said, they're not coming from us. They said, we're not offering that kind of support anymore for Windows 7. But when they went to the computer on the January the 15th, the day after it ceased, their version of Windows was spick and span. There was no spyware. and it had all the latest drivers, and it has continued to regularly receive updates since that time. So the officials went there and they said, okay, miracle number 1, great. That was late 2020. They needed a second one. And one of them was interviewed at the time, and they said, look, we don't want to rush these things, so we'll keep our ears to the ground. And ideally, it would be another one that, in this case, maybe it would be something other than a PC. We'd love to see a different operating system be miracled, or maybe even a different piece of tech get miracled. And nothing happened for about 3 years. And then a devout Catholic, Polish Catholic in Poland, in Warsaw, called Lena Szakowski, she was making some kielbasa sausages, some Polish sausages, for the celebration of Acutus's birthday at her local parish. And she was using a wireless meat thermometer that was wired to her Apple Watch. And she was thinking fondly of Acutus as she was cooking the sausages. And she stuck the thermometer in one last time to see if they were ready, to see if they were cooked. And when she looked at her Apple Watch, it just said, Acutus loves you. And it had a picture of a ghost emoji and a picture of a love heart emoji. And then it had a little ASCII art image of Jesus eating a kielbasa sausage. And she showed that to the Vatican officials, and they said, that's miracle number 2. Carlo Acutis, you're in. So now...
Is it 2?
It's 2, I think. Yeah. I thought it was 3.
Number. It's an odd number. Like, there's a weird number to choose. Yeah. It's 2.
I guess they're like, look, 1... Yeah, we could have got it
they're
wrong.
like, look, this isn't real anyway, so what the fuck does it matter?
Yeah, that's right. They've done the old fool me once, miracle me once. Shame on me. Shame on you. I'm getting that saying confused, which is just what George W. did.
Yeah. You can't fool me again.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so... Shout out to Carlo Acutis. Anyone out there who's got technical problems, doesn't matter if it's hardware or software. Well, this probably is computer related.
Because my grandparents always used to pray. My grandmother Betty, shout out to dear Nana Betty, when she was alive, she used to pray to. Is it Saint Anthony? It's the one who you pray to when you've lost something. There's a saint you pray to.
I think it's Saint Anthony.
When you've lost your keys or something. And so you're right, John, in that now, particularly boomers, who are the ones that struggle the most with tech, they've got a guy now. When, particularly, I mean, imagine how much fucking printer trouble this guy's going to be getting.
Yeah, that's right. It's the stuff that is lagging a bit. It'll be printers. It'll be the few fuckwits that still have fax machines that are going... help me, Acutis, and then they just get a scanner. It appears in their office instead of the fax machine. I'm just looking up different saints to pray to in different situations, which again is such an old-fashioned idea. There's ones for like when you've overcooked fish or when you've
diarrhea.
When you've got diarrhea. The patron saint of irregular stools. Yeah, there's one for when you've like cut your nail, when you've been chewing your nails and you've hurt your cuticle.
Who is your confirmation saint, John?
Favorite saint.
Your favorite saint is, I keep telling you, man, this is like all the data points to the Catholic podcast pivot.
It's true. That would be an easy way to really break our numbers through the roof.
We both already have the membership. We don't have to do it. We're both confirmed. It's true. We've done everything.
Confirmed members. And I like that they don't fuck around. They wait until you're 12 and then they say, look, all that other shit we did to you without your informed consent, baptizing you, giving you first communion, making you confess your sins when you're a small child, But now that you're 12, you're ready to tell us, do you want in? And I said yes, and I chose St. Luke, who is one of the gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Of course, because you loved writing.
To be honest, I just liked the name Luke. Sorry? I love writing, yeah.
Well, you love Star Wars.
I liked Star Wars, and I liked writing. I couldn't tell you much about St. Luke, and I don't know that he ever existed in a historical sense, but someone did who wrote that gospel. And I'm not sure what's in there. It's a pretty good one, I think. Yeah, so anyone who's got any questions about Carlo Acutis, or actually, you can still go to his website. If you want a complete list of the Eucharistic miracles, as I know many of you will, I'm going to tell you the link right now. Carlo Acutis website. Pretty good website. Like it's a bit dated now, obviously, because he's been gone for a bit, poor old Carlo. But
did you mention how he died?
I think he had cancer.
Oh, he had cancer. Okay.
It's called Miracoli Eucharistiki.org.
Okay.
And it's good. You can look at it in multiple different languages. Virtual museum. It's got a download section, videos, maps, miracles list, and a virtual museum, and also a contact section.
Sounds a very saint-worthy website.
Yeah, it's
Give
pretty
this guy
wholesome.
a sainthood.
And we're going to put a link up on dptm.org. We'll have, undoubtedly, I'm sure in the near future, we'll do some sort of sister website situation with Miracoli Eucharistici.org. Get yourselves down there. Really delve in. I noticed that there hasn't been any Eucharistic miracles listed, at least on Carlo's list, in Australia, which is disappointing.
Do we still just have the one saint? I think that's the.
I think we might just still have the one. What's her name? Mary MacKillop.
Mary MacKillop.
Is she even a saint yet?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that happened years ago, and I remember it was big news because she was our first, and also because I think the first miracle had been confirmed, and then everybody was waiting for can we get an AlphaGo on Saint on miracle?
Can someone get a miracle? There was a Bucks party and they ran out of 4x gold.
You could just you could just game the system in that you could surely the chances of somebody becoming a saint are dependent on how many people are praying to that saint. So you could just have a campaign where you just say, look, if you're praying to other saints, everybody in Australia, please stop and focus all of your prayers on Mary MacKillop, and then we're much more likely to get a miracle because we've got thousands and thousands of prayers aimed at her every week instead of just a handful. Like, you just need a campaign. You just need a campaign loading up with focus on whoever you want, and then then someone's going to go. Someone's going to go. Something weird happened to me while I was thinking of this. Yeah. Because I saw the posters. I saw the posters up that said, please only pray to Mary MacKillop, which I did because I'm patriotic and I wanted Australia to get their first saint.
No, it's fucking bullshit. Bullshit European saints.
I consider this fancy fucking soft European saints.
Fucking bullshit saints.
I want a hard as nails. Nun.
Exactly.
She was a nun, wasn't she? Yeah.
Yeah. Best known for her activities in South Australia, the patron state of the show and of our patron saint of the show, Mary MacKillop. Shout out to Mary MacKillop. There's a Mary MacKillop school, isn't there?
Yeah, and there's a statue of her next to the cathedral now as well.
That's right.
And
there's a statue of Carlo Acutis in London, I believe.
What? I'm going to go visit that.
Yeah,
this year.
It's a statue of him turning something off and waiting for 10 seconds before he turns it back on.
This week, John, I was procrastinating, which we all do in this day and age because it's very easy to. And I got a bit angry at myself because I had a plan for the day. The plan for the day was get this thing done, get this thing done, get this thing done. I got the first two things done. I was on a roll. And then I got distracted and I ended up on websites that let you generate entire songs from a prompt. So I was just on two of the sites that I use. One's called Udio and one's called Suno, Udio.ai and Suno.ai. I would encourage anybody to use these sites. And I suddenly found myself spending like 3 hours just typing prompts into these things. And so I would type, for example, I was joking with my uncle David, shout out to David, and he'd sent me a video of the Oban bus in Adelaide, which we've spoken about before, which is the famous bus in Adelaide that goes along the concrete tracks. And so I said, I'll make you a song about the Oban, Dave. What style do you want? And he just said, I want it sung like Duran Duran, new wave. And I'll put it in here because it's this one I didn't generate an entire song. I just did like a little snippet of the chorus, but it took It took 5 minutes. I literally just said 1980s song about the Adelaide Oban new wave style Duran Duran, bang, and it spat this thing. Have you listened to? I sent it to you on. It's
I listened to some about his impending trip to Berlin, which was fantastic.
Maybe I'll play those as well because Dave often writes me and says, I'm really looking forward to coming to Berlin this year. And so I went on to these websites and put in, write me a song about David Megan, who's really looking forward to coming to Berlin this year from Adelaide. And then within a minute, it had given me a song, and then it gives you lyrics as well. Like it does the lyrics for you based on the prompt. But then Udio in particular, maybe you can do it with Suno as well, but in Udio, you can just go, you click this button that says remix and it takes you into the song and it shows you the lyrics that it chose for you and then it lets you edit them. So then I did a few more little twists and I made it even more specific to David by mentioning Port Adelaide Power. There's 2 versions of them. I'll play one of them now.
David packs his bags, it's true. All year long he's dreamt of you. Berlin skies and summer air. For the coup down he's prepared. Long nights he's been counting down, waiting for the taste of currywurst town.
Great.
And that's the first one, and then I did something very similar, and this is the second version.
David's at the TV tower, talking about Port Adelaide Power. Now he's at the Berlin Wall. He was there in 1990 and saw it all. He takes the U-Bahn to Dasclo. What awaits him there? We just don't know. David Megan, let's all give him a cheer.
So that was the second one that I made about Uncle David.
Yeah. And you're being modest, but you also made one. One of the things we've talked about a couple of times now on the show is my and Jacinta's exploration of our options as far as parenthood is concerned. And I've been into great depth with our listeners about my trip up to Sydney to get my boys tested, as I like to put it. And in the wake of those events, you sent me a song in which you imagined a future child of mine, which you lovingly named Bongus Maloney.
Yes, because I'd written to you and said a great name for a boy, if you have a boy one day, is Bongus, which I just thought was a particularly ugly and weird name that I'm constantly sending. Sending you horrible children's names.
Bongus. Bongus. Which I like to think is because the only sound he makes is bong. And so you had to call him Bongus, Bongus Jr.
And I
So
made
can
a
we
song.
play that for the audience?
So the prompt here was something like a folk song, a 1960s folk song about a new parent who's had a son, and the son's name is Bongus. And then it spat me out a pretty good song, and then I just adjusted some of the lyrics and made them slightly more weird and specific to you. And that sounds like this.
Oh, rocking in my arms, he's my little joy, my sweet new baby boy, name of Bongus. Saw that smile, bright like morning sun, I'll go out and buy him a gun. Can't do without Bongus, tiny hands, I'll feed him buckets of blood. His first words will be shut up, Dad.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And you can play that. One day when you have a son, you'll be able to play
Yeah.
that song and he'll think, wow, what a touching tribute
From Uncle Al. Can't believe. Before.
from Bob Dylan.
Yeah, that's right. That's how I got my name, Bongus Maloney Lewin.
So that's
And,
just a text prompt. So I just put in
Yeah.
No, I just put in indie. I just put in folk song about a new dad who has a brand new son, and the son's name is Bongus. And then I put in the buckets of blood bit, and I put in his first words will be "Shut up, Dad." That was a little addition from me
He's
as
a
well.
little
And
rude demon baby.
go on.
The thing that I was impressed by was that you didn't put in name of Bongus. Like that phrase, name of Bongus, is something you would totally come up with.
And it shows it. Yeah, very Steve Brule. Just threw in a little bit of Steve Brule, which I love, Dr. Steve Brule.
Yeah, that's right. Little boy named Bongus.
But so I was meant to spend the day doing my to-do list, and then I spent my day making up stupid songs on Suno AI. I was classically distracted, and then I came away feeling terrible because I hadn't done the things that I wanted to do. Instead, I'd made silly songs. And then I went for a walk, angry at myself still. And as I walked, I thought, I'm just so weak being distracted like that. And then a funny thought crossed my mind. And that thought was, if I was to go back in time 20 years and I said to a person, I'm so angry at myself because I've been distracted all afternoon and I wanted to get on with my work and I was distracted. And they'd go, oh, yeah, procrastination's hard, isn't it? What were you distracted with? And I said, well, there's these new tools that have come out that let you just give a text prompt to a computer and it makes you a full song within a minute. And they'd go, I'm sorry, what does it do? Yeah, it's like... It's like there's this, it's like a computer and you can do it with images as well. And also pretty much video now. You just go, I want a picture of Ronald Reagan wearing a tutu and being a ballerina in Moscow. And it will just do that for you in a few seconds. And in this case, it would just do whatever song I wanted. So I would just go, I want it to make a heavy metal song about my friend John Maloney. And they'd go, hang on, you were distracted by this? I was like, yeah, it's really distracting. And they'd go, yeah, that makes sense because that's like magic. That is magic. How are you meant to not be distracted when there is magic at your fingertips now?
It's true. It's so true.
Is that a distraction?
How did you even go on with your life, they'd say? Didn't you?
Yeah, instead of they being like, so you were walking down the street all angry and grumpy going, the bloody screens have got me again. But really you should have just been going, how can I go on? What's happening here? I am God. Here I am God. I am become God.
How did I manage to stop doing that even after one afternoon? That's amazing. It's an amazing feat of discipline.
It does reveal the challenge that we all face with this stuff because, it's distracting, but we beat ourselves up. But then you just think, of course I'm distracted. I just make my own fucking songs. I can just tell something to sound like Bob Dylan and sing me whatever I want. Of course I'm going to do that. I'm not going to do my fucking, I'm not going to look at an Excel spreadsheet all afternoon. I'm not going to do my fucking taxes when I can do that.
Yeah. And then someone in the 90s was going, I'm distracted by my computer. And what they meant was, you know, the pinball game that comes with Windows.
Fucking it's like, Minesweeper.
Yeah, that's right. Couldn't stop playing solitaire.
Imagine in like next year where you'd be going, I was heaps distracted because I just got to feed the girl at high school that I thought was the cutest. I just got to feed her into a computer and make her my virtual girlfriend. It was as realistic as if she was my actual wife. And I don't think anyone's going to get much done. Get that universal basic income in here as soon as possible because...
Please just let me pursue my pretend marriage with my pretend high school wife.
I was just listening to a podcast just before and a guy was saying how much trouble he's having raising his kids because when he was a kid, you get bored and what's your option? You have to go outside, like play with other kids. He was talking about pick up basketball when he was a kid.
Yeah.
He'd be sat at home, bored out of his fucking mind. And he'd go, well, even though I'm quite anxious about having to go and play basketball with the bigger kids, that's what I have to do because I'm just so bored. And then he said, there is no fucking way in hell that his kids are doing that because they never have to be bored in the house. When are you going to be bored ever again as a kid?
Yeah. And they'll never... I don't know what that does to you. I mean, I think I've probably talked about this on the podcast before, all those hours I spent, you know, waiting to be picked up from school or doing stuff like sitting on the edge of the oval while everyone else played some sport that I couldn't do, or just being bored in class and not having, you know, or on my lunch break and not having, because I didn't have any friends either, which is, but, you know, maybe not everyone's circumstances, but, and, you know, you think, I don't know. That was kind of time for me to come up with interesting ideas or to think about things that I had gone through that my kid, Bongus, is not going to get.
What if I just did that? Like, and also I see kids, I mean, look, we're all guilty of it. I'm not saying that I'm not guilty of it at times as well. But man, there's often school kids at the end of the school day walking towards me it's a leafy, sunny day, and they're literally just walking towards me like this.
Yeah,
like they're walking towards me just like this, and that looks a little bit more sick. But anyway, that's what I'm saying. You know, is it a distraction that I am God now, that we become gods and that we can make our own songs? And I'm going to end the show right on that note, and I'm going to say anybody out there, get on suno.ai, get on udio.ai. It's free to make your own songs. And I know, John, that our recommendations for the image creation AI, shout out to Ethan, who took you up on Bing's Copilot, and he got straight in there and started making weird shit. He didn't know it was a thing.
Wow.
And he jumped on.
Yeah.
And I think he sent my sister Isabel. He said, "Look, I took John's advice and I've made it was like a snail that was busting to go to the toilet. It was very funny." It had a little like human face, and it was all had like an anguished look, desperately looking for a toilet.
Excellent.
And so
I'd love to see that.
So similarly, if anybody uses Udio, so I give you Udio, I think is slightly better at the moment. Okay. I have a feeling that Suno.ai has been trained on crappy stock music libraries. Suno has that kind of feel that when you tell it a song, like you'll say, "Oh, can you make me a song that sounds like Bob Marley?" What it sounds like is it's been trained on like a guy from 2006 who was paid by a production studio to kind of sound like Bob Marley. So it's really clean. Okay. It's way too clean. Udio's really interesting because Udio claims that like when you tell it to be a specific artist, it says, "Oh, look, we can't actually be that artist. So instead, what we're gonna do is we're gonna just kind of because I'll give you an example. So what I told it was make me a song about, I think I said, make me a song. I'll play this next week. It's quite good. I said, make me a song about the movie Shawshank Redemption that sounds like it was performed by U2 in the 1980s. And what it said to me, and I knew it would do this, but what it said to me was, look, we can't actually make it sound like U2, so we're just going to give it the genre of U2. So instead, what we're going to give it is we're going to say 80s rock band, alternative guitar, male vocalist. That's all we're telling it. Yeah. And the song that came out it's clearly U2 but it's just not, it so much sounds like Bono that they're clearly just giving you, they're like, all we told it was just rock band 80s, and here's what and it's just sounds like Bono.
That's great. They've just gone, according to our legal team, this is a generic rock recording.
Exactly. But guys, if you've done it, send them in. Make us, you know what would be great is if you made us songs about DPTM. If you want to make, I've made quite a few songs about former Adelaide Crows star Tony Modra. We've got a couple of them which are quite good in the library.
Great. Yeah. If you want to make other songs for Bongus, I think if there's more than 10 songs about Bongus, then that's going to be, if I have a child, my child's name. It's got to be. It's just, it would be rude otherwise.
And send them on through.
Or maybe be a good name for a pet as well.
Yeah, it would be a name for a pet, actually.
A lizard. A pet iguana named Bongus.
Send them on through hello@dptm.org, or you can send them to us on the Instagram. Don't Praise the Machine, the podcast. Don't forget to check us out on other platforms and sign up for John's newsletter. You don't want to be missing that. It's coming out every single week, and you can sign up right now on your phone. It's got a beautiful landing page that looks great on mobile. DPT, you can just go dptm.org in your mobile phone browser right now. Pop your email address in there. John,
get on there.
See everybody out.
Guys, we want to thank you very, 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 very much indeed for joining us on this episode number 165 of the podcast name of Don't Praise the Machine. You've been with me, John Junior Boost Maloney, and my best friend Alexander Junior Boost Holland, and
the Boost brothers.
Yeah, and we can't wait to see you next week.
Had the podcast.